Right, let's dive straight into this explainer. We're going to explore exactly how early Islamic civilization built its massive administrative machine without compromising its core values. It's honestly a fascinating journey, going from incredibly simple beginnings to this intricate, empire-spanning bureaucracy.
So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The origin of the Dīwān. 2. Borrowing from other empires. 3. Divine law versus administration. 4. The Prophet's 3 ledgers. And 5. Forgery and the official seal.
Section 1. The origin of Dīwān, managing sudden wealth. Okay, so the early Islamic state suddenly faced this massive influx of wealth, which, is a good problem to have, but it was an absolute logistical nightmare. The crucial thing to understand here is our core term, Dīwān. It evolved from meaning a simple sitting room, literally just a physical space where scribes would sit with their notebooks, to what we now recognize as a massive government department. The word itself actually traces back to Pahlavi, or Middle Persian, and its evolution perfectly mirrors how fast the state itself was growing.
Just imagine seeing this staggering number, 500,000. That represents 500,000 dirhams in tax revenue that Abu Huraira, the governor of Al-Bahrain, brought directly to Caliph Umar. Talk about a shockwave to the system. At this point in time, the early state just didn't have the infrastructure to manage that kind of sudden, massive pile of physical cash. They needed a reliable recording system, and they needed it yesterday.
Section 2. Borrowing from other empires, the Persian solution.
To solve this overwhelming logistical nightmare, Umar didn't try to reinvent the wheel. He consulted his closest companions, and they gave him some very pragmatic advice. Just adopt the established Persian administrative system. So, by the year 20 Hijri, he formally established the Dīwān. Now, you might notice our focus today is entirely on texts, numbers, and systems rather than drawings of historical figures, and that's highly intentional. The true power of this new bureaucracy was in its meticulous paperwork, not just personalities. They adopted the Persian system for one simple reason: it worked.
Section 3. Divine law versus administration, principles and pragmatism.
Now, you might be wondering, wait, how could an Islamic state just copy a foreign Persian system? Doesn't that conflict with their own laws? Well, the answer lies in this really fascinating philosophical distinction. On one side, you've got Sharia, the divine law, the original rule. So for instance, divine law dictates that choosing a leader requires mutual consent. But on the flip side, you have idara, or administration. These are the worldly methods and means used to actually achieve that rule. The law says you need consent, the administration provides the flexible tools to make it happen, whether that's setting up an electoral committee, passing out paper ballots, or, using modern voting machines. The rules are totally fixed, but the methods, those can be borrowed and adapted from anywhere.
The Prophet himself actually established this pragmatic boundary with a famous quote about the artificial grafting of date palms. He had passed by some farmers who were artificially combining male and female trees to get more fruit, and he initially questioned if that was really useful. Well, the farmers stopped doing it, the crop yield dropped, and the Prophet clarified with a principle you see right here. He established, very early on, that worldly expertise like agricultural techniques or, by extension, state administration, is entirely separate from divine revelation. Worldly affairs absolutely can and should be optimized based on what practically works.
To bring this into a modern academic context, constitutional scholar Noah Feldman points out how classical Islamic systems handled this exact duality. Take the Ottoman Empire, for example. They extensively used administrative regulations called kanun, which, fun fact, actually comes from the Latin word canon, to govern taxation and criminal law alongside Sharia. It was this perfectly balanced system where administrative efficiency thrived, but as Feldman notes, a regulation could never contradict or supersede the core divine law.
Section 4. The Prophet's 3 ledgers. The first bureaucracy.
So, while Umar formalized the massive Dīwān by borrowing from the Persians, the real administrative foundation was laid much earlier. The Prophet himself utilized 3 specific ledgers managed by carefully appointed secretaries to meticulously organize state affairs. First step, you have al-insha, for correspondence, basically tracking every single letter dispatched and received. Second is al-jaish, the military registry. And third, al-kharaj, the treasury ledger, tracking all income and expenditure. So as you can see, the seeds of a massive bureaucracy were already planted.
And here's a really fascinating historical footnote from the 15th century scholar al-Kolkashandi. He notes that the Chancery Bureau, that tracking of incoming and outgoing letters we just talked about, was literally the very first recording system put into use in Islam. In a rapidly expanding state, knowing exactly who said what to whom was, without a doubt, priority number 1.
Section 5. Forgery and the Official Seal, a True Crime Administrative History.
Speaking of letters, let's look at a true crime scandal that forced the Dīwān to rapidly evolve its security measures. This is honestly probably the most exciting part of administrative history you'll ever hear. So, the setup starts simply enough. Caliph Muawiyah wanted to relieve a man named Amr bin al-Zubair of his debt. He sends a letter to the governor of Iraq ordering a payment of 100,000 dirhams to Amr. But crucially, and this was very common at the time, this official letter was sent untied and completely unsealed.
Well, our guy Amr sneakily opened the letter while it was in transit and altered the 100,000 to 200,000 dirhams. He literally doubled his own payout. It was a wildly audacious act of forgery, and the crazy thing is, he got away with it initially. But he eventually got caught in the most brilliantly bureaucratic way possible. When the governor of Iraq's invoice finally made its way back to Caliph Muawiyah to balance the treasury's books, the caliph noticed the glaring discrepancy. Muawiyah immediately disclaimed it, demanded the money back, and threw Amr straight in prison.
This single audacious fraud directly sparked a massive system upgrade. Because of that forged debt letter and its subsequent discovery, Muawiyah created the Dīwān al-Khatam. This was an entire bureaucratic office dedicated strictly to physically tying up and stamping official correspondence with a state seal to prevent any future tampering. Essentially, fraud created the direct need for tighter administrative security.
Now, the concept of a seal wasn't entirely new to them. Of course, the Prophet himself had previously used a specific silver ring, engraved with Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, to stamp official letters sent to foreign leaders. He had even appointed a specific secretary, Mu'aqib, whose one and only responsibility was to manage and stamp with this ring. This bit of history provides an incredibly valuable lesson for modern governance. By completely separating duties, only specific secretaries held the seal. Even the Prophet's most trusted top advisors, his wazirs like Abu Bakr and Umar, men whose integrity was absolutely beyond question, were deliberately restricted from possessing this official seal. By keeping powers separated and strictly restricting portfolios, the early state guaranteed real accountability.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. If the early Islamic State could boldly borrow the Persian bureaucracy to manage a sudden financial crisis, what systems should today's governments be adapting to better serve their people without losing their fundamental principles? How can we apply these exact lessons of pragmatism and strict accountability to our own modern challenges? Think about that for a bit, and we'll see you in the next explainer.